Hello everybody, I'm Michael Linky, and on behalf of the Australian Institute of Architects, welcome to today's Lean-In session. Following on from their successful presentation on the science of colour that they delivered to us back in May, the Institute's major national partner, Dulux, joins us again today to showcase the colour trends that architects will work with in 2021. We all know that this year has been a year of unexpected challenge. We've operated in very bizarre circumstances. We've had abnormal operating environments. We've had unfamiliarity with situations that have been outside our control, challenges to our mental health through very intensive and what feels like never-ending lockdowns in some states. The year really has in many ways removed us from our general comforts of connection and sociality. Putting that aside though, today we look to the future. So the Dulux Colour Forecast addresses our current landscape, and we'll see 2021 expressed through different palettes that prioritise natural colours and textures that promote comfort and promote security, with moments of stronger colour thrown in to brighten our outlook and ensure that we're positive and that we have a much stronger well-being as we go into 2021. This session today is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available later on our dedicated website page, together with the PowerPoint slides as well. Don't forget though as well that the chat box is open to you, so if you have any questions for Dulux, do pop them in there and I'll go through them with Dulux at the end of the presentation. So from Dulux today, presenting at our Lean-In is Andrea Lucena-Orr. She's Dulux's Colour and Communications Manager, and she joins me now on the Lean-In. Andrea, welcome to today's program. Great to have you with us. How are you?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the AIA for inviting me once again. It's always a pleasure to share colour in any stretch of the imagination. I love talking about colour, so thank you again.
Absolute pleasure to have you. So let's get you to start your presentation, if that's okay. If you can share your screen, and we'll kick off the presentation for you.
Thanks, Michael. So thanks everyone for joining in the Lean-In session today. I'm going to take you through the Dulux Colour Forecast for 2021. As Michael mentioned before, I'm going to share 3 palettes with you that really express 3 tonal palettes. They prioritise natural colour and texture for comfort and security. And of course, there's moments of stronger colour to brighten our outlook and of course improve our well-being. So with the Dulux Colour Forecast 2021, it was quite a challenging year to actually research this year. I mean, normally in an average year, we would obviously go to Milan, we would have a look through London, through Paris, we'd get a lot of information from other trade shows along the year. When you do any forecasting, it is a constant. It's not something we do for 1 month and just basically leave it. It's a constant, I suppose, update on where we're at. This year was quite challenging. Obviously, we only had 2 fairs in actual real time. So we had the Maison Objet in Paris in January, and then we had Stockholm Design Week in February, and then everything ground to a halt. So luckily we did have some virtual fairs. So we had the Salon de Mobile in the virtual design week. We also had Design, which was fantastic if anyone was able to look at that. So we did get a lot of information from those virtual design weeks as well. The other good thing is we were actually able to do our colour marketing group. We meet once a year, normally in Milan. And we were able to join their group on a virtual 2-day conference, which is absolutely fabulous. So we got a lot of content, a lot of information from what's happening in Europe, and especially from the design and colour area. So once we've got all this information, obviously the next thing we have to do is overlay other elements or influences, such as what's happening in the fashion arena, what's happening just from an economical perspective, and obviously the global COVID, you know, that the whole sort of halt to a lot in design this year. So we look at all of that, and then we have to review colours for our own market. So we're looking at colours that will work across Australia and New Zealand, because not all colours that we see in Europe will work here, or from a cultural perspective will be used here in a large volume. So this year, Dulux Colour Forecast 2021, I'm going to take you on a journey of 3 colour palettes. So when we look at the 3 palettes, the first palette is called Retreat. That's a beautiful earthy palette. You can see the really gorgeous muted tones. We've got those gorgeous greyed back sort of blues, if you like. We've got the deep dark greens with that brownish underlay. Brown still key to the base, as it was in our 2020 forecast. Our next palette is Nourish, and that's our lightest palette. You'll see the beautiful warm shades in this particular palette. Lots of beautiful tans, almost like those sort of blush colours. And then we've got almost sort of a slight yellow lemon colour, which is a new entrant this year as well. Our final palette is Reset, and Reset is our brightest palette, but it's certainly not clean or saturated colours by any imagination. It's a beautiful toned back palette of gorgeous, I suppose, positive and uplifting colours. Let me take you on a journey through our first palette of Retreat. So our idea of what home means has really evolved. What was once a place for solace and recuperation is now our vehicle for daily life. As our work-life boundaries continue to blur, we delve deeper in search of balance, restyling our spaces to accommodate our flexible lifestyle. We seek out the security of well-loved DIY traditions like cooking and baking and crafting and, of course, painting to really help us feel grounded and present. The Retreat palette draws on nostalgia to create that sense of familiarity and refuge we crave. Incorporates upcycled materials in natural timbers and vintage accents such as ceramics and weavings alongside modern utilitarian shaped decor pieces to create a well-worn yet timeless look. Stormy blues channel tranquility and signify better times to come, whilst essential whites and burgundy feed on our sense of the familiar and tradition. So just to pick up on a couple of things in our mood board here. So as I mentioned, Stockholm Design Week was one of the fairs that we did get a report for this year, which was fantastic. And the top left image is the Sculptor's Residence. That's from Norm Architects. But the important thing here is the colourways. So you'll see lots of the tan brown bases here, very natural colours, lots of beautiful timber. That's a really key palette, you know, that sense of warmth that we're looking for as our base colours going forward. The other thing I wanted to pick up on is that beautiful rocking chair down the bottom from Warm Nordic. So that's from InStyle. It's called the Fabric Feel and Chair Swing. Now, the importance of furniture, it's very much into that comfort level. So obviously the aesthetic has to be beautiful, but it always comes back to the comfort. Whenever we've read anything in our articles this year and when we've done our research, it really does pair back to everything has to be inviting. It has to be able, people have to be able to sit for longer periods, which is a really interesting thing. I don't think we've ever had that before. And obviously aesthetically it still needs to work in the space as well. When we're looking at Retreat, let me go through our colours. And I mentioned that they're very earthy colours. So we've incorporated some warmth here with Whisper White, just that subtle sort of warmer undertone in this particular white. We've also incorporated that beautiful vintage linen. If anyone's ever used vintage linen before, it's a beautiful soft sort of greige, but it does have that sort of warmer beige undertone as well. And then when you go through things like Tea House, one of our most popular greys, but it still has that underlying warmth. All of that comes through all of these colours, that underlying warmth. We've incorporated burnished bark. If anyone's ever used a brown with that red influence, absolutely beautiful. Especially if you're looking at something really sophisticated, you know, you want to really make a formal sort of character in a space, you know, you can't go past those beautiful rich burgundy sort of brown reds. We've also incorporated the blues in Blue Balm and Five Fingers Peninsula, which is one of our colours of New Zealand, but then going into that deep dark ocean colour of Winter Sea as well. And when we look at how these colours come together now, with any of these colours, because they're all earth-based, we can actually utilise them together. All of these colours will work together. But even when you see the 3 palettes together, because they're all so toned back this year and so muted, a lot of these colours can work between the 3 palettes as well, which is really important. But obviously, when we're, depending on what sort of job we're working through, it might be a retail outlet, it might be a new hotel foyer. Obviously, it depends on the sort of depth of colour you're looking for. If you want something that's really beautiful and light, obviously you can't go past something like vintage linen or whisper white, or even to the beautiful mysterious grove, and that's sort of your mid-tone greyish. Still lots of light reflectance in that as well. Then if you want something more colourful, you know, something like that gorgeous mid-tone green. It's got a lot of yellow, so it's still got that olive base and that browner undertone. But mangrove is a beautiful mid-tone green, still got that underlying warmth as well. So this year with photography, we teamed up with Julia Green from Greenhouse Interiors. We were very restricted with what we could do with photography this year, as you can well imagine. So we were very lucky to, even between lockdowns, get our photography sessions done. But this year, we've just done a simple residential shoot, and just on the colour forecast from a forecast and trends perspective, I worked with Bree Leach and also my New Zealand colleague Davina Harper. So this colour on the left here, we have diffuse grey, and that's offset against that beautiful deep blue. And that's really important. So when we're talking about colour, it doesn't necessarily always mean that we're pushing blue paint. It may be an accessory, it might be in soft furnishing, it may be in a fitting or a fixture. So in this case, we've used that blue as the accent. On the right-hand side, we've got that beautiful colour of New Zealand in Five Fingers Peninsula. That's been offset, obviously, with the beautiful deep timber, but also the tan. You can't go wrong with those mid-base blues, with bringing in browns, and warmer browns, even terracottas and things like that as well work beautifully. Caramel colours, putty colours. There's a close-up here of that gorgeous Five Fingers Peninsula on the left, and you'll note the checkered throw on that chair there. That was one thing we did pick up in upholstery, but also in fashion, was that checkered sort of look coming through again. Once again, it's a very traditional look. You can imagine in times like this, a lot of people really feel comfort in tradition, and that's where you'll start to see a lot of those sorts of iconic traditional pieces coming back again. The middle image is that beautiful tea house. That's been paired with that gorgeous denim just to uplift that colour a little bit. It is a very neutral colour. It will sit back, so you can really make something of the colours on the forefront in that space as well. The last image is in mangrove, and we've paired that with whisper white. You can see that warmer white works much better because of the mangrove has that underlying warmth in it as well. If you were to use something like Lexicon Quarter or even Lexicon Half in this, it just wouldn't have the same balance. It would look much too cool with that warmer, deeper green. So when we're looking at the colours as a whole, as I mentioned before, they are very earth-based. It's important, I know you guys often work with fittings and fixtures with powder coatings as well. So we sat down with our powder coatings colleagues, and we've come up with 4 colours that work with our forecast palettes as well. So it's important when you're doing, retail fit outs, it might be something that you're doing in an office fit out, that you've got colours that will work back through these forecast 2021 colours. So our next palette is Nourish. So let me take you on a little journey through Nourish, our lightest palette. So whilst most of us are required to experience the world from within the 4 walls of our homes, we are really facing digital saturation at its most extreme. We crave time and space away from our screens. There's a renewed appreciation for nature and rituals of self-care to really help soothe the mind and create an aura of calm and, of course, a sense of improved well-being. The Nourish palette plays into this longing for natural beauty and earthly connection. Biophilic hues of mossy and sage greens, turmeric and citrus connects us to nature, inspiring us to fill our homes and workspaces with plants and blooms. The tactility of materials and raw textures provides a level of physical comfort to the touch, while surround form surfaces and soft-shaped furniture really offer visual relief. So when we're looking at this particular mood board here, you'll see the softness straight away and just that sort of, I suppose, relaxed sort of feel. It's very tonal as well. When we're looking at some of the things on the middle image to the left there, the Vitra fabrics there, you'll note that the colourways is very muted and it's very pared back and very much in those earth tones once again. You'll also note the high level of texture. That's something that we're seeing through a lot, in a lot of the research that we've done this year in particular, the high textured fabrics and textiles in both upholstery but also drapery is quite significant this year. Anything that we can actually feel away from our obviously smooth technology that we're working with constantly. So boucle, I mentioned last year in the 2020 forecast, we're still seeing a lot of that sort of boucle-esque, if you like, from the 70s coming through in textiles, once again, very importantly. The other thing is drapery. We're seeing so much drapery coming back again. Once again, you know, obviously it works on an acoustic level, but it also from a sense of as an aesthetic in particular, it's a really soft and flowing sort of item. And once again, it's something that we can touch. So a lot of drapery we're seeing in both residential spaces, but also back in commercial. We just did the judging for the Colour Awards last week. And it was amazing how many finalist projects did have draping in them as well. And it just sort of adds that extra dimension to the space. From a furniture perspective, I mentioned the fact that there's a lot of softness and almost it's sort of made for comfort and aesthetic. And you can see that in that foyer sofa there. You can almost see the creases of how soft that particular fabric is on that sofa. So just going through our palettes, you'll see the softness and the warmth once again. So we've incorporated 2 of our whites in White Exchange Half and of course Pale Tendril Quarter. Now, White Exchange Half is a beautiful sort of beige base. It still has that browner undertone, but it's a really great neutral white if you're looking for a neutral white. Pale Tendril Quarter, just that hint of subtle green coming through there. And you'll notice a subtle undertone of green in a lot of these neutrals that we're showing you on this palette as well. So warm neutral is a colour that we've had for a long time. It's a fantastic colour for both interior and exterior. It's a beautiful warm tan colour. It's quite a complex colour, so it can look a little bit red sometimes, so it might have just that slight sort of warmth coming through, but also can look a little bit greenish sometimes, depending on light and surrounding colour. Buffet, an oldie but a goodie. You know, Buffet's a warm neutral. It's absolutely a beautiful colour for both internal and external once again. Really soft. You can use the lighter, warmer whites with that as well if you want to scheme it with something light, but you can also bring in those beautiful deeper browns as well. It works just as well in that space. Then we've incorporated these gorgeous greens, and you can see right to the depth of olive blend. So that's got that browner undertone, so it works back in all of those browns and tans and those beautiful warm neutrals. But importantly, it has that depth to it as well. And you can also see in balsa stone, I don't know whether any of you have used balsa stone. It's one of my favourite colours. I can't really say that because I've got so many, it's ridiculous. But balsa stone is a neutral with a very subtle sort of ochre and almost greenish influence. So once again, it's a complex colour. It's a chameleon. It will take on different genres, if you like, depending on what it's next to. It's a really great colour to work with. For that lightness at the end of the tunnel, we've brought in Berry Cashmere. It's not a colour we've had in forecasts very often because it is a very sort of, I suppose, muted yellow, which we don't have a lot of in our palettes. So this Berry Cashmere is a soft sort of accent colour we would use. Once again, it can be paired back with all those neutrals and those sort of earthy greens as well. And just for that brightness, that Burnside. If anyone's ever used Burnside before, it is just gorgeous. It's a little bit like Tupelo Honey. It's got that warmth, that inherent sort of greenish influence as well. Quite a complex sort of colour, so it can take on different sort of hues, if you like, depending on what it's next to and the lighting. So how we would see this looking. Now, obviously, there's a lot of lighter neutrals and whites in this palette. So if you want that real lightness, you can really play around with layering those neutrals with those whites as well. Or if then you want to pick up accents, you can bring in those smaller, lower volume accents. Or obviously, if you want to make that real sophisticated look, you can bring in the darker colour like that beautiful olive blend, which is also behind me. And bringing in those softer neutrals to, I suppose, layer it. And it might be in a bedroom, for example, in this particular space, using those lighter neutrals for bed linen or draperies and things like that, just to balance the space. So in this particular bedroom, we've used that beautiful warm neutral colour that has been used with White Exchange Half on just that fireplace surround. And then we've brought in skip 2 just on that little locker cabinet next to the fireplace there. And that's a beautiful neutral, that just subtle apricot tinge in that colour. That's been worked alongside from a styling perspective with that almost that Burnside colour, so that really rich caramel sort of, almost ginger colour on the bedding. And it's just such a great balance with those brown-based colours once again. On the right-hand side in the office space there, we've just shown Moroccan Tan. You can just see the warmth and the richness in that colour. It's got almost like a glow to it because of the colourways. There's a lot of colour in that particular colour. You've got red, you've got ochre, and you've also got a little bit of black to make it more muted as well. Olive Blend, which is that image behind me, of course. Now, once again, this works so beautifully because of the balancing side. So incorporating those gorgeous, warm, sort of honey colours, the tans, the almost terracottas, work so beautifully with those deep, dark sort of khaki colours. They're a very soothing colour, very tranquil, work beautifully with all those sort of brown-based palettes. The middle image, this is a gorgeous colour. If anyone's ever used this before, it's a really great light reflectance colour. It's a yellow green, so it has fantastic qualities from a lighting perspective, but it does give you that warmth still because it does have a lot of yellow in it. So it is a green, definitely, but it does have that more, I suppose, warmer side of the green. And the other thing is it's quite a neutral green as well because it's got so much warmth in it as well. On the right-hand side, we have the colour Skip 2, which is a beautiful sort of blush colour. That pairs back with all of those sort of greens as well as all of the browns, anything with a tan, because it still has that muted brown undertone. So everything comes back to that muted brown undertone in these palettes. So just looking at the palette once again, incorporating those beautiful powder coatings. You know, obviously we know that powders come in many different arrays of colour, but it's important that we know that these beautiful light colours also will work beautifully in with the decorative paints as well. And I know certainly over the years, just working with powders just on a palette by palette scale, you know, it's always been hard to collaborate, I suppose, and work together. So we've worked really hard in trying to make more of, when we've got Dulux decorative paints, working back with the powder coating sector as well, because we know you guys are doing jobs that take in both areas and both are just as important. So our final palette, this is our most colourful palette. This is called Reset. So in the wake of our new normal, a level of adaptability, positivity and resilience is on the forefront of our minds as we shift to a slower paced lifestyle, one that's far removed from the adventure and excitement we once thrived on. Really reflects on what's most important to us as we draw closer to our families and our local community. The Reset palette reflects our renewed energy and desire to brighten our outlook as we adapt to home life. Subtly inspired by the 70s, uplifting hues of blue, green and energetic reds offset contrasting whites and neutrals. Furniture styles and materials are mixed, however unified, with colour combinations for a more eclectic approach to design. Quilted fabrics paired with objects and mementos from past travels will elevate the level of comfort and, importantly, the connection to the space. So this is, as I mentioned before, even though this is a colourful palette, it's still very muted and pared back. So we're not seeing those really bright colours, you know, the blues that were really big in 2020 had become much more reduced as well. The blues have also moved into that sort of more teal area, and you'll see there the image on the right in the middle is the Melodich Round Vase by Noom, but you can see the beautiful teal layering in that particular piece. The top left-hand corner, that sort of orange-based red. Now that's the Hello design by Calvin Klein Executive Floor in New York. Now that particular design, you can just see like the level of warmth in that. So it's not really terracotta, it is a red, but it's got that really striking orange undertone as well. Really important colour. The other thing is textures as well, like all of the textiles and all of the quilting styling in upholstery, but also in even in wallpapers and going back to tiling surfaces again. So lots of the, you know, any way you can get texture in, it's basically layering texture as well. So let's have a look at the colours. So as I mentioned before, these are not bright and saturated colours. These are very, very tonally muted colours. So we've incorporated two of our most loved whites, which is Natural White and Snowy Mountains Half. So Natural White is one of our, I think it's our #1 white, both in the commercial area but also in residential. The reason for that, it is a warmer white, just very subtly warmer. It works beautifully with many, many muted colours and brighter colours as well. So it's got a great, I suppose it's almost like that perfect ivory. The Snowy Mountains Half is one of our most neutral colours in the white area. So if you've got cooler and warmer colours that you're dealing with, you might have concrete and timber, it will work between both of those surfaces. So it's a really fantastic colour to use. Snowy Mountains Half has, I suppose, from a tint perspective, has ochre and it has black. Natural White has ochre and black, but it also has a touch of bright red as well, just to give you that extra laying of warmth. Ecru is a colour we haven't had in our forecast for many years, and I can tell you it is a stunning colour. If anyone wants a neutral with that underlying warmth, but it's a bit of a chameleon once again, this is your go-to colour. Ecru is, it's got ochre, it's got black, and it's got a little bit of red in it. It does have a little bit of, like, depending on light and surrounding colour, it can look a little bit more on the ochre side, so a bit more yellowish. But it can also look a bit greenish, depending on what it's with. And I've seen it turn between light from yellow to green. So it is a chameleon colour. If you love that change in colour, this is definitely one to have a look at. Light ceramic, beautiful mid-base grey-green. We had Tearoa in our 2020 forecast last year. This is sort of the evolution of that particular colour. That deep dark teal we've incorporated in Daintree. Once again, a beautiful deep teal on that sort of greenish blue side. Then the neutrals in Aura and Trellis. Once again, warmth, but brown underlay. So brown inference in both of those colours. In the brighter area, we've got the gold pheasant in that coral, but also hot chili. Now, if anyone is familiar with our forecast for 2020, we actually had gold pheasant and we had russet tan in the 2020 forecast. The first time we've ever brought colours from one year to the next. But the importance of that is this year in particular, because we saw so much of it still, we couldn't actually take it out of our palettes. It was too important. The others is obviously going to those beautiful deep browns as well in Vixen, but also russet tan that has that greenish sort of undertone as well. And how does it look? So when we're pairing these, once again, it really depends on the job or the function of what that colour is meant to do in the space. You know, is it creating the form, or is it just working with the form? So it really depends on whether you want to go deep and dark or whether you want to keep to those sort of lighter colours as well. This palette gives you everything, and once again, you can mix and match those three palettes because tonally they work beautifully together. When we look at some imagery here, Aura is on the left. Now that is a really beautiful neutral colour. You can see how well it pairs back with those tans and browns and almost to the terracottas once again. It does have that browner undertone, but it also has a bit of red in it. So sometimes it can look a little bit like a little bit mauve. You can see a little bit of that coming through. The centre image there is the Terra Rose. That is a beautiful, rich, warm rose colour. Once again, because it does come from that browner base, it will work with your rattans, your timbers, and all of those natural elements as well. The right-hand side, I mentioned before about Snowy Mountains Half and how neutral it is. You see exactly how it works back with the timber, but it also works just as well with that concrete. So it is a hybrid, if you like, between the warmth and the cool, and it's a neutral white that you can actually use right across the board. It's a fantastic white to use. In the kitchen here, we've just done the light ceramic on those cabinets just for a bit of brightness, and of course, Trellis is on the right-hand side, which was inspired by that beautiful painting. So once again, when we're looking at an overall palette, we have incorporated these 4 powder coatings colours to work back in with the main palette. You can also see a lot of these colours are quite deep and rich in colour as well. So there's quite a lot of colour that goes into these colours, if that makes any sense, a lot of tint and depth in these colours. So it is the strongest palette out of all of our 3 palettes. Here we have the Dulux Colour Forecast for 2021. Obviously, it's a much more brighter outlook than what we're living at the moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So hopefully you you will have lots of questions for me, hopefully.
Thank you, Andrea, for that. Of course, Andrea Lucena-Orr, Dulux's Colour and Communications Manager. Thank you very much for that fantastic presentation. We haven't had a huge amount of questions, I will admit, but they will come through once I start asking you a couple. I've written down a few. First one, office environments traditionally have always been muted grey palettes, quite dull, quite monotonous. Do you see a trend, especially as we come out of COVID, office environments taking on some of the more interesting colour palettes, especially the Reset palette? Do you see that coming into more corporate environments throughout years ahead?
I think it's more the fact that office environments are warming up, and I think there's more natural elements coming back through. And I know that when we spoke to Lucy from Warwick Fabrics last year, when we did our forecast together with them last year, it was amazing the difference in commercial textiles that they actually had through, and a lot more underlying warmth as well. So you can see it not just from a paint perspective, but from all elements. There's a lot more undertones in the warmer sector. So even if you've got greys, it will still be on the beige side. So more that the balance between beige and grey together, which gives you that much deeper warmth in all of the elements. So that also lends itself into heading towards those browner shades in things like, bringing in timbers back in, again, whether it's, in laminates or whether it's in real timber. It might also be in layering those warmer, richer colours like in Reset as well, in smaller elements.
Do you still see the trend of offsetting everything with sort of a lexicon quarter, like a vivid sort of white on door trims? I noticed, especially with some of the palettes, sort of we're still celebrating, quite a vivid contrast between, a traditional flat ceiling white and a lexicon quarter door trim. Is that still the same thing? Can I do that in my new house for 2021?
Yes. Well, I mean, residential is obviously quite different to situations. In the residential, I mean, we're still seeing people loving the Hamptons look. I'm sure you've heard of that many, many times, which typically is a warmer look as well. Even if you go into those sort of muted blues, they'll still use that really striking clean white, like a Lexicon half or something like that as a trim colour. But ultimately, when you start using those warmer palettes, so if you're using those grazes, you can't use your Lexicons. You've got to go just that little bit more warmer, because otherwise it's a little bit too, it almost makes the white look a little bit greyish or bluish as well. So you've got to be careful to get that balance. So as soon as you start working with a warmer palette, that's when you need to think about what white you're working with, and head towards more neutral whites, such as the Snowy Mountains half. Or if you're even going, deeper in colour, you may even look at something like natural white, whisper white, those sorts of whites as well.
Let's talk a little bit about thermal efficiency. This is a question that's coming to me privately on the chat, and there's this trend, and this has come through a couple of times in discussions in advance of today's presentation, but just in relation to this exceedingly evident trend that we're now seeing with sheer curtains in terms of, thermal efficiency, even, energy efficiency. Is this a trend that you anticipate? I mean, curtains used to block out light, and now we all seem to be embracing a sheer trend. Do you see that sort of increasing?
Well, it's funny because I'm just getting some shears sent to me just from a colour perspective actually at the moment. But the shears are more for the aesthetic, I think, rather than the thermal properties. Definitely just looking at a new home that I went through a few weeks ago, just very locally, they're using all of that so they get a consistency from every window from the outside. It's a very large residential property, and they want the same look throughout the whole place. So they're just using shears for that. But for a thermal quality, they've got blinds, because obviously that's what's going to give them that block out and everything. You don't get the same visual look from a blind than you do the obviously beautiful drapery in shears. But from when I'm talking about draperies, I actually mean more thermal property draperies as well. So you're seeing heavier fabrics used in draperies again, and beautiful drops of fabrics that give you gorgeous lines, and obviously the pleats back again. So if you look over time, it's amazing how you see pleating change from being like in the 80s, we almost went like almost flat pleating. I don't know whether, I mean, I certainly remember doing it myself, and you almost had like every second pleat, whereas now it's quite descriptive in the way how we use our pleats, so they're much more higher in quantity, and the fabrics themselves are more flowing. So it's sort of a different, very soft look, if that makes any sense, but that's where you get your thermal properties from.
Okay, great stuff. Well, that's really the end of the questions that I have for you, Andrea. And I do want to say to everybody on the call, I hope you found that beneficial. It's something different for us. Normally we go down quite a highly technical route with our lean-ins, but again, as you well know from your presentation back in May, it has been one of our most popular viewed and most downloaded programs, and so it's great to have you back again. So thank you so much for that. So a massive thanks to Andrea Lucena-Orr, Dulux's Colour and Communications Manager, of our major national partner here at the Institute. I'm going to say that the inspiration doesn't actually end here with Dulux, because don't forget that as an Institute member, you can access your Dulux Gold Privilege card. So that gives you the ability to access very special discounted rates if you purchase them at a Dulux trade store or at an Inspirations paint store. So if you're keen to take advantage of this offer, what I'm now going to do in the chat is just pop in a link for you. So you can see that there. So that'll take you to our brand new membership portal here at the Institute. Click on that. I really recommend it. I've got one. The gold privilege card with Dulux is amazing. The discounts are endless, but do download that link, have a look at it. And of course, that takes you to our brand new membership portal. So if you've never logged in before, just use your email and email address as your login, and we can go from there. This is a couple of questions, just I suppose as we end shortly, Andrea. What's the chosen colour for 2021? Can you announce yet, or are we still a few months away?
Oh, look, I mean, we don't necessarily have one colour of the year like a lot of brands may do, because I think it's too restrictive to actually give one colour. But if you were to say to me, out of all of these three palettes, where do you see like the key colour in these palettes, I would have to say in the deep dark green. So something like olive blend or mangrove is a really key colour. I think it does bring us back to nature in times like this, and certainly when we had the last big, I suppose, event from a colour and design perspective was after 2001, after September 11. And we had already had all of our forecasts done. They were all ready to launch. Overnight, everything went to brown and beige. Overnight, like we had to change everything we had put together already, because nothing was going to work in this, in the new consumer sentiment. And you can see the same sort of thing has happened here as well. We still need colour to look forward. We still need colour to give us that sort of positive outlook. But ultimately, brown is our grounding colour, and brown gives us that security and that strength. And it's a really important base in these particular colours this year.
I think we're all very much looking forward to 2021. I think this year has taken about 6 years to just get to September. So, for us, 2021 on the horizon soon is a great thing to look forward to. So Absolutely. The colours that you presented, the reset palettes, and indeed the three palettes that you presented to us have just been fantastic and really inspirational. And hopefully they've given everybody on the program today some inspiration to go away and look at some of their work that they're doing with clients, and also from a residential perspective as well. As always, a wonderful presentation. So thank you very much. So just a reminder, just in closing, thank you so much, of course, to Dulux. It's fantastic to partner with you. We've been partnering with Dulux for over 15 years here at the Institute. And of course, we have a very close relationship with them. You too can get your Dulux Gold Privilege card. I will keep stressing that. So look at that link on the chat box, click there, download your application to get a privilege card, and look at the benefits that you can get through utilising those at a Dulux trade store. That is it for today. So thank you, Andrea. And of course, I've been Michael Linky here at the Institute of Architects. Great to have you with me. Look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. On Thursday, we're going to still stay in the creative realm. We're going to be looking very much at copywriting. So we're going to be doing a copywriting masterclass for architects. So this will help you to attract and win new business. So join me 12 noon Australian Eastern Standard Time on Thursday for that. Until then, do stay safe. Great to have you with me today, and look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. Cheers.